Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and this is your New Eden news for December 2nd, YC126. Vanguard breaks new grounds as Trustbreakers exploited. Trustbreakers open planetary defenses to Vanguard's subversion. Multiple planetary defense networks have suffered outages in insurgent star systems. Reports of these PDN disruptions came in following the deployment of Trustbreaker arrays by deathless wraiths. With defenses down, clashing Vanguard warclone deployments have been sighted across Rahaba 2. The Trustbreaker arrays are capable of scanning PDNs and using a remote connection to the Warden in Zarzek to reconstruct the passkeys necessary to shut down surface-to-orbit turrets on temperate planets. However, these arrays have come under persistent attack by Drifter-controlled forces. The Deathless Wraiths called for support in this conflict, but most Capsuleers preferred to take the opportunity to keep the arrays alive long enough to generate PDN passkeys before allowing them to be destroyed. Almost all these PDN passkeys found their way into the hands of militia forces, who used them to disrupt defenses in pirate-controlled areas, exposing them to ground-based assaults. According to reports from the field, Vanguard warclones have been spotted fighting each other for control in the compromised planetary defense turrets at sites across Rahaba 2, retargeting them at each other's deployment infrastructure. The opposing warclones seem to be fighting on behalf of the Angel Cartel's Malachim Zealots on one side, and Mordu's Legion mercenaries on the other. The split loyalties of the Vanguard imply their uses have been made available by the Deathless Circle to both the Legion and the Cartel. This has sparked rumors that the Circle's primary interest is the dependency on Vanguard deployments in a conflict, rather than the outcome of that conflict. It is clear that those responsible for the ongoing development of the Vanguard deep within the Fulcrum, led by the Arcombine Lifegiver and the enigmatic Quartermaster, are taking full advantage of these deployments as a proving ground for the minds, clones, and equipment wielded by this new generation. Despite this, the Deathless Circles is believed to be reeling from the destruction of their Trustbreakers. Theft of their passkeys also means that they have lost the ability to dictate deployment details. The Tribal Liberation Force coordinating the disabling of PDNs in Rahaba for counter-pirate deployments by Mordu's Legion, the State Protectorate Force is similarly well-placed to counter Guristas forces in the future. General Gar Orga of the TLF sent a message to the front line stating that, quote, with the assistance of Capsuleers fighting cartel insurgencies in space and delivering these passkeys, plus Legion-coordinated Vanguard efforts on the ground, we will soon free these worlds of the pirate corruption, end quote. Agency Network deploys Vanguards as colony attacks escalate. Early Thursday morning, local administrators of the 4 Equinox workforce colonies of the Branch, Aquarius, Vale of the Silent, and Wicked Creek regions reported attacks on transports and supply vessels at remote work sites. This marks the latest escalation in a wave of increasingly violent raids faced by Equinox nullsec colonies in recent weeks. Those responsible for the attacks, who identify themselves only as militia, are suspected of belonging to a decentralized movement that aggressively opposed Equinox workforce colonies. Upwell has denied appeals for preemptive surface security reinforcements on logistical and economic grounds. Various enterprising third parties have begun offering services to the colonies for exploiting their disruption. These organizations are wide-ranging, including Order of St. Tetramon, Society of Conscious Thought, and even the Blood Raiders. Mercenaries contracting houses with controlling interests in the agency network have deployed war barges in orbit of these affected planets. From these, they are staging trials of Vanguard freelance deployments. Vanguard operating in these locations are accepting contracts from third parties and colony admins via the agency job brokerage framework, in addition to acquiring and extracting assets for personal use. News in brief. Battle in 1N TAC FJ8 results in over 4 trillion Iskin destruction, including Revenant, Vanquisher, and Komodo, as well as the first ever Azrael-class Titan lost in open combat. Upwell refuses to comment on an emergent militia threat. Legion-coordinated Vanguard forces gain ground over Malachim Zealot Vanguard, providing 40% of total suppression gains in Rahaba. Rabaka? I'm not pronouncing that correctly at all. Wormhole telemetry reports ships in Drifter deployments with new Drifter recon battleship. Concord under fire following 1 year of insurgencies. Trustbreaker deployment ends following continued Drifter attacks. Sanmatar Shakur praises Capsuleer for coordinated cooperation with TLF forces. Executives across state visits Wayest Temple, the House of Many Winds, as it hosts spiritual conference on New Caldari. That's it for the news. Now for some analysis. Obviously, the Trustbreaker arrays were those sites that appeared within FOB systems for the last, few days during the, week or so leading up to and the first few days of the Vanguard sites, this playtest. There isn't a direct connection between the two. This is more of a thematic connection, as it turns out. One of the things I find really weird about this is they talk about mostly Angel Cartel and Malachim Zealots, but I think that a lot of the stuff has been with Garistus predominantly. Rahaba is Garistus, not Malcolm, not Angels. So maybe that's just a mistake. It does look like they swap between the two. See, Rahaba deployment, this. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, there seems to be a few errors in the post, but also I think that a lot of that's because of the fact that this is all very kind of shifting stuff. And I think that part of it, maybe this got, like, they had to swap it from one to the other. Like, it was partially written, but the Angel Cartel deployment has, the Angel Cartel insurgency was ending right as the shooter started. And then this is more about the 4 other maps, which we'll look at when we get to the Vanguard stuff. So they basically, with the new Vanguard playtest, they have you have the Solstice map and you have the Carrion map, which the Carrion map was the original map that we got to play with. The Solstice map was the second map that came out with Solstice. And then there's an alternative of each of those. There's Aftermath, which is a daytime Carrion, and there's Maelstrom, which is like Solstice, but like in a storm area. So that's the 4 locations, the Branch, Quirius, Vale of the Silent, and Wicked Creek locations that they're talking about here. So before, all of the deployments affect, like, you had contracts, and those contracts would affect corruption and suppression. Now, with those 4 sites, the contracts are just money and tasks for you to do for the various empires, and only the 9v9 fight is for suppression or corruption. Okay, so they split those out and they kind of rearrange things a little bit for this playtest, and this is just kind of laying that out here, right? So here we have the 9v9 playtest, which is fighting for corruption versus suppression, and here you have the open sites, which shift between the 4 maps and are places to collect loot and also do missions for all different kinds of people, including, as I say, Order of St. Tejramon, Society of Conscious Thought, and even Blood Raiders. That's what this is all related to. The Battle in 1N Tech FJ8, this was a huge fight. What is it? A fraternity guy. I think, from my understanding, I think it was the Azrael, the Komodo, and the Vanquisher were all piloted by the same dude, like multi-boxing, which is quite a big of a loss, but he's apparently bouncing back from what I saw. I also noticed the Drifter Muster, which is one of the Merc dens to control anarchy, wondering if we are for sure leading into Drifter versus Deathless art. Seems like it. Yeah, I did put down mercenary dens, but they did not last long enough for me to get a site. Now that I've noticed that mercenary dens have become significantly more popular, I actually found, when I went out there, it took me quite a while to even find a temperate planet that didn't have a skyhook with a mercenary den already on it. Wormhole telemetry reports ships of Drifter deployments, Drifter recon battleship. That's from the patch notes that we read earlier, where there's the new kind of weaker Drifter that shows up in the event that you don't spawn the big battleship with the capital escalation. Not sure about I think a lot of this stuff is just more of the lore about the Trustbreaker and the idea that Mortis, or the counterinsurgencies, won most of the Trustbreaker sites. Although, again, we tried to save the Trustbreaker multiple times, and they got blown up every time. So it may have looked like we were just waiting for them to get some passkeys, but we were sure trying. Pretty, this is mostly related to the Vanguard stuff. So this has been your New Eden News for December 2nd, YC126. I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space.